You're hurting your mother. Is that what you want? My father demanded. I blocked his number that night. A year later, I received Mom's letter. I stood in the terminal, watching my parents' faces shift from surprise to calculated defensiveness. My suitcase handle dug into my palm as I gripped it tighter. The weight of betrayal pressed against my chest. They hadn't expected me to notice. That was their first mistake. "Where's Charles?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. My father glanced at my mother. A silent conversation passed between them, the kind perfected after 40 years of marriage, the kind that excluded everyone else. "Marcus, be reasonable," my mother finally said. "We couldn't afford tickets for everyone." But there they were, my sister Olivia's children, both of them bouncing excitedly near the check-in counter. My son nowhere to be seen. The airline confirmation email still sat fresh in my inbox. 4 adult tickets, 2 child tickets, all paid for by me. A surprise I'd arranged when they invited me on this supposedly adults-only family vacation. A vacation that was apparently adults, only except for Olivia's kids. My temples throbbed, the overhead announcements faded to white noise. "You told me no children were coming," I said. My father shrugged. His weathered face arranged itself into an expression of innocence that I once believed. "Plans change. Olivia's kids needed this break. They've had a rough year." So had my son, so had everyone. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, checked the transaction from 2 weeks ago, 6 tickets, $4,782, my money. "You let me pay for everything," I said, knowing you'd excluded Charles. My mother's hand fluttered to her throat, a gesture meant to convey shock but I recognized as calculation. "Marcus, we didn't have extra money for more tickets. We had to make choices." The realization washed over me like ice water. They hadn't forgotten my son. They'd deliberately left him out and used my money to do it. My sister approached, her children trailing behind her. Her eyes avoided mine. "What's the holdup?" she asked. "Our boarding starts in 40 minutes. I turned to her. "Did you know?" Her hesitation told me everything. "Marcus, don't make a scene," my mother hissed. "We're going to miss our flight." I laughed, the sound surprised even me. Sharp, bitter. "You're right, you are going to miss your flight." I pulled out my phone again, tapped the airline app, found our reservation. "What are you doing?" My father's voice had taken on that authoritative tone, the one that once made me straighten my spine in fear. "Canceling the tickets I paid for." Their faces, God, their faces. If I hadn't been so angry, I might have laughed again. "You can't do that." My mother's voice rose an octave. I met her eyes. "Watch me." 3 taps later, it was done. Confirmation of cancellation appeared on my screen. My father's face darkened to a dangerous red. "You're acting like a child." "No," I said. "I'm acting like someone who just realized his family has been using him." Olivia stepped forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Marcus, please, you know I need this vacation. Things have been so hard lately." Hard? Right. The $40,000 in debt she'd been hiding from her husband. The debt I'd been secretly helping her pay off month by month for the past year. I looked at her, really looked at her, my big sister, the golden child who could never quite manage her life but somehow always managed to get laid out. "Figure it out yourself," I said. "I'm done." I turned and walked away. Their voices called after me, threats and pleas mingling into a familiar chorus of manipulation. My phone buzzed in my pocket, text from Olivia. "Please come back, Mom and Dad are furious. Don't leave me dealing with this alone. You know they'll take it out on me." I turned off my phone. The drive home took 40 minutes. Each mile put between me and the airport lightened something in my chest. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I could breathe again. Sarah's car was in the garage. She wasn't expecting me home for a week. I'd told her I needed this time with my parents to fix things. What a joke. I found her in the backyard, watching Charles on the swing set. 7 years old and full of energy, dark hair like mine, curious eyes like hers. She turned at the sound of the sliding door. Her expression shifted from surprise to concern. "What happened?" I sat beside her on the patio bench, watched our son soar toward the sky, legs pumping with determination. "They brought Olivia's kids, not ours." She stiffened beside me. "After you paid for everything?" I nodded. Sarah reached for my hand. Her fingers were cool against mine. "I'm sorry." Such simple words, but they held more genuine care than anything my family had said to me in years. "I canceled the tickets." She squeezed my hand. No judgment, no questions about family loyalty or keeping the peace, just support. "Good." We sat in silence watching our son play. The afternoon sun warmed my face. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I ignored it. But peace never lasts long in a family like mine. They showed up the next morning, all of them. My parents' SUV and Olivia's minivan parked along our curb like an invasion force. Sarah spotted them first from the kitchen window. "They're here." My stomach nodded. I'd been expecting this. The confrontation, the guilt trip, the pressure to give in. "Let me handle it," I said. But they didn't knock. They rang the doorbell repeatedly, a demanding staccato that echoed through our home. Charles looked up from his cereal. "Is that Grandma and Grandpa?" I exchanged glances with Sarah. "Finish your breakfast, buddy." When I opened the door, they pushed past me, uninvited, unapologetic. "Marcus, you've gone too far this time," my father began. My mother headed straight for Sarah in the kitchen. "Sarah, dear, you need to talk some sense into your husband." Olivia stood awkwardly in the living room, her children clinging to her legs. "We drove all the way here to give you a chance to fix this," my father continued. "The airline is willing to reinstate our tickets with a penalty fee." I stared at him. "You came here expecting me to pay more money after what you did." He waved his hand dismissively. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It was a simple misunderstanding." My mother's voice carried from the kitchen. "Sarah, Marcus didn't tell you the whole story. He felt guilty about leaving you and Charles behind, that's why he canceled. But we can work this out." The lie hung in the air, bold and shameless. I started toward the kitchen, but Sarah appeared in the doorway. Her face was calm, but her eyes blazed. "I think you should all leave," she said. My mother's face registered shock. Sarah had always been the peacemaker, the diplomat who smoothed things over when I clashed with my family. "Sarah, surely you understand." "I understand perfectly," Sarah interrupted. "You excluded my son deliberately. You let Marcus pay for tickets you knew didn't include Charles, and now you're in my home lying to my face." The room went silent. Even Olivia's children sensed the tension, pressing closer to their mother. My father recovered first. "This is family business, Sarah. You're taking his side without hearing all the facts." Sarah's laugh was cold. "I've heard enough facts over the years. Please leave." "Marcus," Olivia pleaded, "don't do this. You know I need your help with." She stopped herself, but it was too late. "With what?" my mother asked sharply. Olivia's face paled. "The secret debt. The monthly payments I'd been making on her behalf. The financial house of cards she'd been building." "Nothing," she mumbled. My father's gaze shifted between us, suspicious. "What is she talking about, Marcus?" Before I could answer, Sarah spoke again. "I'm asking you one more time to leave our home. The next request will come from the police." My mother gasped. "You wouldn't dare." Sarah took out her phone. "Try me." They left in a flurry of slammed doors and squealing tires. The sudden silence felt like a blessing. Sarah put her phone down. That felt good. I pulled her close. "You were amazing." From the kitchen, Charles's small voice called out, "Is Grandma mad at us?" My chest tightened. How do you explain toxic family dynamics to a 7-year-old? Sarah squeezed my hand. "I'll talk to him." My phone started ringing. "Olivia," I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, a text. "Please pick up. I need to talk to you. Mom and Dad don't know about the money. Please." I blocked her number. The fallout came in waves. First, the group text from my father demanding I make things right. Then, emails from my mother filled with guilt and manipulation. Finally, when those went unanswered, the social media posts. Vague references to ungrateful children and family heartbreak designed to elicit sympathy from distant relatives and friends. I blocked them all. 3 days of blessed silence followed. 3 days of clarity, of realizing how much energy I'd spent placating people who saw me only as a resource to be used. Then Olivia showed up alone. No children, no parents. Just my sister standing on my porch, looking smaller than I remembered. Sarah was at work, Charles at school. I almost didn't answer the door. 5 minutes, she said when I cracked it open. "Please." I let her in but remained standing. No coffee offered, no pretense of a normal visit. "They cut me off," she said without preamble. "Mom and Dad, they found out about the debt, about you helping me." I said nothing. "They said if I was hiding that from them, what else was I hiding?" She laughed bitterly. "Turns out their support was conditional all along. Who knew?" I knew. I'd always known. "What do you want, Olivia?" Her eyes met mine, desperate. "I need your help just until I get back on my feet. The debt collectors are calling every day. Daniel is threatening to leave if I don't fix this." Daniel, her husband, the man she'd been hiding her spending from for years. No, I said. She blinked. What? No, I won't help you anymore. But I'll lose everything. I shrugged. Then you'll lose everything. Her face crumpled. How can you be so cold? I'm your sister. Were you my sister at the airport? When you knew my son had been excluded but said nothing? When you expected me to pay for your children's vacation while mine stayed home? She had no answer for that. This is what they taught us, Olivia, to use people, to manipulate, to lie when necessary. I moved toward the door. I'm unlearning those lessons. Maybe you should too. You don't understand, she whispered. They're all I have. I opened the door. That was your choice. After she left, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. The family photos, the Christmas cards, the carefully curated images of happiness that covered the dysfunction beneath. One by one, I took them down. My father called the next day from a number I didn't recognize. I almost hung up when I heard his voice. Marcus, he said, his tone softer than usual. We need to talk about what's happening. I said nothing. Let the silence stretch between us. Son, I know you're upset, but families have disagreements. It's how we handle them that matters. His voice took on that reasonable tone he used when trying to manipulate a situation. We've always been there for you. Have you? He sighed dramatically. Marcus, we raised you, put you through college, supported you when you and Sarah were struggling early in your marriage. The selective memory was astounding. They'd supported us with strings-attached loans that I'd paid back with interest. We're family, he continued. Family sticks together no matter what. Except when it comes to including my son in family vacations. That was a misunderstanding. His voice hardened slightly. You're being unreasonable and you're hurting your mother. She's barely eating, barely sleeping. Is that what you want? The guilt trip right on schedule. What I want, I said carefully, is to be treated with respect, not used as a wallet. Nobody's using you? His voice rose sharply, then softened again. Look, Marcus, we all make mistakes. We're sorry if you felt excluded, but Olivia needs your help now. She has nowhere else to turn. She has you? Silence hung between us. I could almost hear him calculating his next approach. You know our situation, he said finally. We're retired, fixed income. We can't bail her out again. Again, so they had been helping her financially too, just not enough. That's not my problem. Of course it is, the reasonable facade cracked. She's your sister. What kind of man turns his back on family? The kind who's tired of being exploited. His voice turned pleading. Marcus, please, if you do this one thing, we can put all this ugliness behind us. Your mother misses Charles terribly. We could have Sunday dinners again, holidays, be a real family. The carrot after the stick, access to them dangled like a reward for compliance. Dad, I'll tell you what, he interrupted, voice brightening with forced joviality. Help your sister through this rough patch and we'll take everyone to Disney World next summer. Charles would love that, wouldn't he? We'll do it right this time. I closed my eyes. The blatant transactional nature of his offer made my stomach turn. Everything had a price with them, every kindness a hidden cost. No, Marcus. I said no. His breathing changed. I could picture his face reddening the way it did when he lost control. After everything we've done for you, he hissed. This is how you repay us. You always were selfish, always thinking about yourself. Selfish, I laughed despite myself. That's rich coming from you. You listen to me, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. If this is how you want things to be, fine, but you should know your mother and I are updating our will. If you don't help your sister, don't expect to see a penny when we're gone, not one penny. The threat hung between us, their final leverage. Keep your money, I said. It costs too much. I hung up, blocked the new number, sat in the sudden stillness of my kitchen. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly free. Sarah found me there an hour later when she came home from work. One look at my face told her everything. It's done, she asked. I nodded. It's done. She sat beside me, took my hand in hers. Are you okay? No, I admitted, but I will be. The front door burst open. Charles raced in, backpack bouncing, full of stories about his day at school. His energy filled the room, pushing away the shadows. Later that night, after Charles was asleep, Sarah and I sat on the back porch. Stars punctured the darkness above us. Crickets chirped in the grass. Do you think I'll regret it? I asked, cutting them off completely. She considered this. Maybe sometimes, on holidays, when Charles asks about them, when you see other families that seem normal. But regret doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Some people can't love without controlling, can't give without taking more in return. The night air cooled my skin. In the distance, a dog barked. I kept hoping they'd change, I said. I know. I kept thinking if I just did enough, gave enough, they'd finally see me. Sarah's hand found mine. The problem wasn't that they couldn't see you, Marcus. It's that they saw you perfectly well and still chose to use you anyway. The truth of her words settled over me. Not a revelation, but a confirmation of something I'd always known but been afraid to admit. We're going to be okay, I said, not a question. Better than okay, she promised, and sitting there in the quiet night, I believed her. 6 months passed, then a year. The silence from my family became normal, the absence of drama a relief. I heard through mutual friends that Olivia filed for bankruptcy, that she and Daniel separated, that my parents bought her a condo to live in, the support they'd claimed they couldn't provide suddenly appearing when I was no longer in the picture. I felt nothing but a distant sadness. Sometimes Charles asked about his grandparents, why we didn't visit them anymore, why they never called. I told him the truth in terms he could understand, that sometimes adults make choices that hurt other people, that love shouldn't come with strings attached, that family is about how people treat you, not just shared blood. Simple lessons I wished someone had taught me sooner. On Charles's 8th birthday, a package arrived. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting. Inside was a toy train set, expensive, the kind designed to create obligation. There was a card, "We miss our grandson, call us." I showed it to Sarah. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I considered the package, the implied message, the old pattern trying to reassert itself. Without a word, I sealed it back up, wrote "Return to sender" on the box, placed it on the porch for the mail carrier to take away. Some gifts cost too much to accept. That night we celebrated Charles's birthday, chocolate cake, presents wrapped in superhero paper, friends from school running through the sprinkler in the backyard. As I watched my son laugh, surrounded by genuine affection that asked nothing in return, I knew we'd made the right choice. Breaking the cycle, refusing to pass down the legacy of conditional love and emotional manipulation. It wasn't easy. It wasn't clean. There was no dramatic resolution, no tearful reconciliation like in the movies, just the quiet victory of choosing something better for ourselves. For Charles, a different kind of inheritance. My phone rang that evening as we were cleaning up, a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it but answered at the last second. "Hello? Marcus," my father's voice. "We need to talk." I closed my eyes, breath through the familiar tightening in my chest. "I have nothing to say to you. Your mother is sick." The words hung between us. The classic tactic, illness as leverage, emergency as manipulation. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "Cancer," he continued. "She wants to see you and Charles to make amends before." His voice broke, either from genuine emotion or skilled performance. With him, I could never tell the difference. Sarah watched me from across the kitchen, concern in her eyes. "Dad, Please, son, whatever issues we have, don't punish your mother for them. She's suffering." The old guilt surged up, the programmed response to put their needs above my own. "I'll call you back," I said and hung up. Sarah was beside me instantly. "What is it?" "Mom is sick, cancer apparently." Her expression revealed nothing. "Do you believe him?" I considered this, the convenient timing, the emotional appeal, the focus on what I should do rather than any acknowledgement of what they had done. "I don't know," I admitted, "and that's the problem." We sat at the kitchen table, the remains of birthday cake between us, balloons still floating against the ceiling. "If it's true," Sarah said softly, "what do you want to do?" I stared at my hands. "If it's true, I'd send flowers, maybe a card, but I won't bring Charles into their world again, and I won't let them use illness to erase everything else." She nodded. "And if it's not true?" "Then it's the final confirmation that I made the right choice walking away." I didn't call my father back that night, or the next. Instead, I called my mother's sister, my aunt who lived in the same town as my parents but with whom they'd had a falling out years ago. The family gossip, the one who knew everything. "Aunt Carol, it's Marcus." Her surprise was evident. "Marcus, it's been ages, how are you?" "I'm fine. Listen, I heard Mom is sick, cancer." The pause told me everything. "Who told you that?" she finally asked. "Dad called yesterday." She sighed heavily. "Your mother had a breast cancer scare last month, a small lump that turned out to be benign. She's fine." The relief mingled with anger. Another lie, another manipulation. "Thanks, Aunt Carol, I appreciate the truth." "Marcus," she said before I could hang up, They're drowning without your support, financially and otherwise. Olivia's divorce is getting ugly. Your father's retirement fund took a hit in the market downturn. And nothing, just thought you should know." She paused. "For what it's worth, I think you were right to walk away. They never appreciated what they had in you." After we hung up, I blocked my father's new number, changed my email address, closed the last door on that chapter of my life. Sarah found me in the backyard, watching the stars again. "Well," she asked. "She's fine. It was a benign lump. Dad exaggerated to try to pull me back in." She sat beside me. "I'm sorry." "Don't be, it's clarifying." And it was, the final confirmation that nothing had changed, that they were still playing the same games, using the same tactics, expecting the same results. But I had changed, grown stronger in the breaking away. Learned that family, real family, is built on respect, not obligation, on honesty, not manipulation, on love that gives without expecting repayment. Charles's laughter drifted through the open window, the sound of innocence preserved, of cycles broken. Some inheritances aren't worth passing down. I reached for Sarah's hand in the darkness, found it waiting for mine. "We're going to be okay," I said again. This time not a question at all, but a certainty. A truth paid for at great cost, but worth every penny.